Heal Squad, you may know Zachary Levi from Chuck or from Shazam, but today he is getting vulnerable. He is sharing his journey to radical self-love, how he really had to hit a dark rock bottom to discover that he did not actually love himself, and he had to go on a journey to find that love for himself, find that radical self-love. So he's sharing his tips, his tools. We're talking generational trauma, destigmatizing mental health, how we can choose love over fear. You guys are going to be obsessed with this episode. It is so good. It is so powerful. So please share it with someone who could benefit. Tell yourself you love yourself in the mirror today. And hit that subscribe button because it really helps us and it means the world to us. Thank you, Heal Squad, and enjoy the episode.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Better Together. When you know better, you get better. That's our goal here every single day. It's what our mission is. It's what we're committed to. And today is no exception. Our quote of the day comes from our guest. There is no magic cure for anxiety, depression, and traumas, as much as I wish there was one. It is a journey full of ups and downs, victories and challenges, but most importantly, toward loving and valuing yourself and others as we are intended entirely and unconditionally. And that is from Zachary Levi. Heal Squad, welcome back. We are chatting with the one and only Zach Levi about his new book, Radical Love, Learning to Accept Yourself and Others. And it's all about his mental health journey. You guys might know him from Chuck or Shazam, all of the projects I loved him from. Also, his most recent was playing Kurt Warner in American Underdog, which was amazing as well. So he's had a really great career, and now he is really devoted to this whole mental health journey and democratizing mental health, because he talks about how he spent so much money trying to get himself better, and he knows that that's not available to people in most cases, and said that that's why he wanted to write this book and why he really wants to share this information for those that can benefit from it. So I really applaud him, because it's scary and hard to share anything in the health world, and mental health especially. I feel like people are starting to break down those barriers. But I really applaud him for coming forth with this info and sharing this with everybody. It's really exciting.
I agree. And that was what a beautiful way to put it, Maria. I think that people like Zach and honestly like you, the more you guys talk about it, the more it makes everyone else feel like it's okay to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think back to when we had Matthew McConaughey on and him talking about it with his book. I think it's such a beautiful era we're in with mental health, and I love it. I hope it just keeps becoming this thing that everyone's like, yeah, let's talk about it. Let's get better together,
Exactly. Well, the other thing is, and I just thought of this and wrote it down, there's not just a stigma involved with health stuff, but especially in our line of work, you can't get insured for projects very easily if there's stuff going on. So I'm wondering how he circumvents or navigates all of that. For example, or even if you end up going to seek psychiatric help and you have to go in a facility, you can't get certain insurances anymore, like life insurance.
Wow.
I know somebody that, was admitted and, or didn't actually get admitted, but just on the record, there was some situation written in his paperwork, and his life insurance people declined him. They said, nope, can't have it.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And really sad.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I've always thought about that stuff, and what that kind of looks like, because what happens is, and from what I've heard from doctors, is a lot of people will go in the black market to get the anxiety medication or psychiatric drugs they need. And then you never know what's in them technically, but they don't want it on their record.
Oh my gosh.
Right. So it's a pretty intense subject.
Yeah.
So we're going to get into that with Zach. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, Zachary Levi. I guess my first, question is, was it scary to write this, and what made you do it?
Yeah, right. Going right for it. So yeah, it was scary, I guess, on some level. It's still kind of scary. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what everyone's reception of the book is going to be. It has yet to happen. So I hope that it's at least mostly positive. I'm hoping that it's overwhelmingly positive. I'm sure there's going to be some people out there that are like, I don't get it, or I didn't like it, or even people like that I talk about in the book. I mean, I talk about my family. I talk about my friends. I talk about my whole life and a lot of the things that I've been through. And so, I share a lot. It's a real and raw, vulnerable journey where I basically just talk about how I had a complete mental breakdown about 5 years ago and then went into life-saving therapy. And that's a very vulnerable thing to go into. But I've also learned over my nearly 42 years of life on this planet that vulnerability is a superpower. And the more we are able to allow ourselves to show our belly and be like, hey, here's me. And, oh, wow, I've screwed up so bad. And look at all these things that I've done in my life. The more that begets other people feeling more confident and safe to do the same. And we all need to do that because we're all struggling. We're all screwing up all the time. And that's okay because we are all on a journey of healing, whether we know it or not, whether we want that to be the case or not. We're all on a journey of healing something. Some of us have a lot more to heal than others, but so that's, it is, I guess, a little scary to bear all that, but I honestly believe it's worth it. Harper, the reason I even wrote the book was because I basically, after going through all this crazy, amazing therapy, on the heels of that, still basically while I was finishing up that therapy is when I booked Shazam. And I always felt that I still, to this day, I know that I wouldn't have booked that job had I not gone and done the real work first in that moment in my life, because I needed to. That was more important, to go take care of my own heart and mind. And then Shazam happened because of that. And then when I was promoting the movie, I felt very compelled to tell everybody that, like, hey, this was all tied to me going and loving myself, learning to love myself in a new and bigger way, maybe for the first time in my life. And in telling that story on various podcasts, HarperCollins then was like, hey, we saw that. We think this could be a book. And so now it's a book. But I never set out to make a book or to write a book. I have a hard enough time reading books. So the idea of sitting down and being patient enough to do this and all the things that come with it is a very trippy experience, but one I'm super grateful for.
Wow. Well, I'll tell you, I started this show after having a brain tumor and my mom having a brain tumor and us going on our health journey. And it was for the same reason. It's like, it's the quest to get better in all areas of life. It's the quest to find those new modalities. It's the quest to, start attacking some of this stuff and sharing it. So it's like, it's my journey with everyone. So I always say we're better together. That's why the show is called Better Together.
Amen. Yeah.
And, a lot of the stuff that I've been hearing you, because, I had to, look through your Instagram, I had to look everywhere to try to get bits and pieces. But it is that journey of going into your traumas that we talk about here every single day, whether it's with an EMDR expert or a somatic therapy person. Yeah. I've had everyone on here because when you don't look at that, you don't realize how much it's running your ride and why your responses to situations is what it is. It's crazy. So I'd love for you to unpack that in your words and what you experienced and learned.
Yeah. Well, basically, so like I had kind of alluded to earlier, at 37, I moved to Austin. I had all of this head full of steam and dreams, and I was going to go change the world and, I don't know, live out my goals and dreams that I'd had for many, many, many years. But in doing so, it was kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back. I'd been running away from a lot of pain and a lot of trauma. Unbeknownst to me, I'd been doing this, but I was doing this nonetheless for a very long time in my life. And I had a complete breakdown, and I went to work with this organization that operates in the Connecticut area. And they basically you go stay in a home. Oh, you're in Connecticut. Okay, cool. It was beautiful, by the way. I went during October with all the trees, they were all changing color. I was like, this is so dreamy. Except that I was having a total nervous breakdown. So it was like dreamy, but I don't want to live. Like, it was really, really gnarly.
Oh boy.
Anyway, so I go and stay in this home, and then every day for 3 weeks straight, I had they ask you, what kind of program do you want to do? And I said, I want everything. I throw the kitchen sink at this. I got to the point where I basically didn't understand why I should live anymore. And it was the darkest place that I had ever gotten to in my life. And I had been to places like that previously, but this was, for whatever reason, it was the dark. It was like I could hear the lies that whisper to you, like, just give up. Like, it's not worth it anymore. Like, everybody would be happier if you weren't on this planet. Like, those types of real lows and depression and anxiety. And so, I said, what do you want to do? I go, well, I want everything. I don't understand why I feel this way. And I want to know why I'm here. And I want to make sure I never have to come back here. If we can get to the root of that. And so my programming was intense. It was like every day I had at least three sessions with a smattering of a psychiatrist, a psychotherapist, a dialectic behavioral therapist, an art therapist, a meditation therapist, a life coach, a nutritionist, working out at the gym 4 days a week, Pilates twice a week, yoga twice a week. Like, I was like, bring it. I need to. So I got a lot of different modalities that were served up to me in that time. And I learned so much while I was there, namely that I didn't even understand what it meant to love myself. That was a huge light bulb moment for me when I was in Connecticut. Like, oh my God, I thought my whole life I loved myself, and I don't even like myself. I don't even like hanging out with myself. And I'm still a baby in figuring that out. I'm only 4.5 years into this, journey of figuring out how to love myself. So I'm a little baby. I'm a little toddler Zach inside, like, just like, dude, stop beating yourself up all the time. Wow. Now I know where to, the warning signs. Now I know what to look for. Now I know when I'm like harshing on myself and like being fearful. I'm like, oh, Zach, okay, there you go. See, now you're recognizing these moments, and now you got to tell yourself, kind of like what you were saying before. You don't even realize how you're not even in control of your ride, because your hormones are flying around in you, your dopamine and serotonin and norepinephrine and all the other things that totally affect your mood and how you see yourself and how you see the world and how you see yourself fitting into the world. So I needed some massive, massive reset, and all of that stuff was very helpful. But I will say that there was one woman who was kind of like, they have these wonderful middle-aged women who were basically kind of semi-retired, but they were either wives or mothers or both. And they would be like a companion to you, basically like a house mom, to make sure that you were taken care of and you got to all your appointments. Because people who would go and work with this organization, as I was, were pretty much oftentimes down, like you're at death's door in a lot of respects. You're fighting to figure out why life is worth it. And so it's very difficult to depend on those people to drive themselves to all of their therapy. And so anyway, I had this, they would rotate through. But there was one woman, and they were all incredibly lovely, but there was this one woman who in the book we call Beth. But she was an angel on my shoulder. She was a mom, is a mom and a wife, and a wonderful one of both, and saw my heart and empathized with me and just loved on me like a mom. Like, my mom had passed away a few years prior, and I could feel a mother's love through this woman and God's love through that, and figuring out how to like kickstart my starter, my pilot light to get my own self-love generating. And had it not been for that love and the prayers of this woman, I don't know that all those modalities of therapy would have taken hold in the way that I needed them to. That was all great clinical information, but you can learn everything that the book can tell you. You're not going to apply it to yourself unless you actually believe you're worth applying it to yourself. And you're not going to think you're worthy of applying any of that great wisdom to yourself if you don't first love yourself. And so there was a lot of really gnarly, things that I was learning, deep things. And, 5 years in, nearly 5 years in, I feel like I have made so much progress, and I'm so much more proud of and happy with myself, and give myself far more slack and love myself more. And, I'm still a work in progress, but the book itself is really, it's layman. I'm not, I say in the book, like, I'm no pastor. I'm no therapist. I'm not a professional speaker on any of these matters, other than the fact that I think I've learned a good bit in my life, and I've been able to digest it and metabolize it and be able to present it in a way that hopefully is something that is easily digestible and hopefully and relatable. Well, hopefully not relatable. Hopefully plenty of people haven't gone through the crazy and the fire that I've walked through. But if they have, I'm hoping to, come back and help pull them through those same flames, because we can do it. We got to love ourselves through it. And we got to love each other through it, which is that radical love.
So loving yourself. I had a similar experience where I realized, oh, I don't think I've loved myself. And it was at a Dr. Joe Dispenza meditation event. I don't know if you've heard of him.
I have. I'm a big fan of Joe Dispenza. Yeah.
So we just did Joe Dispenza week recently.
Oh, that's great.
And I did a 2-parter with him. I went to his whole event, and it was
was that down in Cancun or something recently?
I did the one in San Diego.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so one of the meditations, something came to me and I realized I haven't been loving myself. But the thing with it is I don't think we're taught how to, right? From a young age, it's a comparison game, and it's especially for girls, we're never pretty enough, we're never skinny enough, we're never good enough. And so it's, for guys, they're not strong enough, they're not manly, whatever it is.
Sure.
Guys have their
pick
thing.
Pick your poison. Yeah.
So what did you learn about how to love yourself? Because I'm finding that most of us have to see this later in life, like most things,
right,
Yeah. No one teaches you to take care of your health growing up either. It's like, go out, make a success out of yourself, be a winner, get all A's. And then health slaps you in the face, whether it's mental health or physical health. You got slapped in the face with your mental. I got slapped in the face with the physical. I also had mental stuff I have to deal with too, like everybody else.
Oh, sure. And then and each begets the other too. You can have a lot of psychological trauma that leads to physical malady. You can have physical malady that leads to psychological malady. They are very interchangeable and very connected. And, the body holds trauma. There's some great books on that stuff. The body keeps the score. And, and our gut, as we've now come to find out, is our second brain, and all that stuff's in there. And, there's lots of this jazz. And, as you were saying before, we haven't been taught very well. We haven't. Some people have. Some people,
really?
Hear me out. There are a few unicorns out there. And these unicorns are products, I believe, and I go into a lot of detail and depth about this specifically in the book, but we are all products of our environment, all of us. Yes, there are some like crazy outliers that are born with some weird physiological kind of switch, different, like a sociopath or a psychopath, but these are very small percentages of the population. By and large, everyone, we are all this very firm, concoction of nature and nurture. And a lot of that is the nurture. A lot of that is, what are you growing up in and around? What is the environment? What is the environment in your own home, then with the rest of your family, then at school, then in your kind of community, then society at large? I mean, these are all things that shape us greatly, greatly, greatly. And unfortunately, society has not valued loving oneself. In fact, in a lot of ways, I think a lot of people have shied away from even beginning to understand it, because it can very easily be twisted into, oh, you're about yourself, or you're self-centered, or you're a narcissist. That word gets thrown around a lot too. Although we need to be using terms like that, because there are narcissists out there, and we need to understand all these different things. But even they are a product of their environment. Everyone is a product of their environment. So yes, there are the few unicorns, I believe. I think I've even met a few, lucky enough to meet a few over the years, that had incredible parents. And the reason why they had incredible parents is because their parents had pretty incredible parents, and so on and so forth. This is generational, one way or the other. You either generationally got some really great protection and guidance, or you didn't. And most of us didn't, because most of our parents didn't, because most generations prior to now gave two craps about mental health. In fact, we didn't talk about it. It was stigmatized. Like, whoa, you go to a shrink? You go to a what? Like, I remember all the movies that we grew up watching in the 70s and 80s. It was always a joke if somebody was at a therapist. It was always a joke if somebody went to a shrink. And you'd laugh about that. But, they were the ones that were kind of messed up. Everybody needs to go to a therapist. Every single person. We all have to go. And so I think we have a great opportunity to finally, at least in some respects, totally change that stigma, which I think we are doing a very good job at. More and more people are talking about this, obviously. And that's so fantastic. But we also need to recognize that generational trauma is really, really real. And therefore, we can have more grace with ourselves and more grace with others, recognizing that jerk that cuts you off on the road. Like, I love all people, but bad drivers are like, they're just, but I have to remind myself that person acting a fool, being totally unaware of the rest of the cars on the road, whatever their situation is, they were led there ultimately. Now,
so you have to have empathy.
Well, yes, of course, because empathy is the only thing that's going to save us. We have to be willing to look at ourselves and recognize that we are dum-dums just like everybody else. We are all broken these different ways. And some of us are a little more awake, a little more enlightened, a little more healed than others. But that doesn't give anyone cause, or shouldn't give anyone cause, to walk in arrogance. If anything, that should create more humility, because you recognize, oh my gosh, I was once this person who saw even more darkly, and now I can see more light. And what a blessing that is, and what an incredible gift I can now, bring back to others. Hopefully, that's what it should be inducing in all of us. But it's a difficult thing to do. That's why, I mean, the book is the title's it's a little redundant. At least in my mind, it's a little redundant, because I think love in and of itself, actual love, is radical. I just don't think we think of love that way. Most of us are conditioned to believe in the more romanticized ideas of love, whether it's actual romantic love with a partner and whatever that kind of, romance, fantasy, kind of all of the rom-coms and Cinderella stories that we've been presented with, and all of the content that we've even been a part of making, all of these things, right? That's a whole idea that we got to unpack. Like, what is that kind of love? Yeah. Then also, just how we love ourselves, how we love those directly around us, and then how I think then groups of people, we can learn to love each other, tribe to tribe, country to country, people to people, in ways that we have not been able to do, because we have to be able to look across whatever the aisle is and go, oh yeah, you're just doing the best that you can. You're doing the best that you can with the tools that you have available to you in your life, in your society, in your community, in your home. And that is radical love. We have to radically accept, radically forgive, and radically love ourselves and each other. But this does not, because a lot of people go, well, wait a minute, what about these people that are doing wrong? Loving and liking are two completely different things. You can fully love someone and recognize the miracle of life that they are, and still have firm boundaries with them, and not appreciate what they're doing and not want what they're doing in your life. You can do that. It is absolutely possible. More than that, we can allow people to not constantly be shamed or at fault for what is going on in the world, but rather be responsible for what they are doing in the world. Like, we just want to throw fingers around like, oh, well, it's their fault this happened. Well, nah, not really. They're acting in the way that they're acting because their parents were a big part of teaching them that that's the way you are. I mean, look at racism. It's a perfect example. That is learned. Kids don't come out of the womb and all of a sudden they're like, I don't like you because you have a different skin color. If anything, they're attracted. They're dazzled by it. They see each other and we all need to see each other like the 5-year-old in each one of ourselves. We need to look down there and go, oh, look at that child with all that wonder and all that promise and all that love. And sure, kids can be little shits and still have their little selfishness and all that stuff. But I do think deep inside, that is, every single one of us is a child of God, and we have to see that. And if we can see that, we can look beyond all of the shaming and the blaming, and we can start to embrace people as the miracles that they are, and still hold people accountable and have boundaries. These are totally doable things,
Oh my God. I really think you need to be a minister. That was so beautiful. I got chills 18 different times, but it's true, because even when I was at the meditation event, I just kept writing on my notepad, like, love is the only answer. Oh my God, love is the only answer. It was hitting me so intensely that we have to love people where they're at. And that is difficult, like you said, but everyone is doing the best they can with the information they have. And I think that's so beautifully put. And I hope that people hear that and have that breakthrough, because we need it more than ever.
Yeah. We're more divided than ever, for sure. And, it's the irony is that these very devices that allow us to have this interchange and hopefully get this out and propagate this to more people, and, maybe it resonates with them. This is the very technology that's also dividing us in so many ways. The way the internet and algorithms and social media and their algorithms and all of us comparing ourselves to other people's fake curated lives, and we can't stop it. And it's so messed up, right? But we've got to be able to use this technology to hopefully, have these other conversations and really point out, like, love is, I always thought it was very trite, like the Beatles lyric, all you need is love. I always, thought like, sure, yeah, but you also need this and you also need that and so on and so forth. But if you do philosophically, spiritually boil it down, there's only fear and love. All things, can spawn from one of those two things. And we are operating out of far too much fear in this world. And I really do think that, not to get too spiritual or whatever, but I do think that there are two roads, and we either go down one or we go down the other. And we're in a middle mixed bag. We've been in human history. We've been in a big mixed bag for a long, long time. But we do have these moments where we really solidly take a road of love, even as a collective people. And it's incredible the effects that it has, that it resonates around the world. When, like when man landed on the moon, when Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong, and who's it, Michael Collins? He always gets left out. I think that was his name, Michael Collins. Anyway, the whole world was in on it. Like all of a sudden, even like Russia and China, everybody was like, "Oh my gosh!" As humans, this thing is happening. Like this is crazy. And we go through these times of peace, but we're not loving enough, because I don't think that we're doing actual love. Again, not to get too spiritual, but like to quote a little Bible really quick, a little Jesus real quick. What is it to love those that already love you? That's not really love. That's a great sentiment. That's easy. But I mean, love is to love your enemy and pray for your persecutor. That's love. That's radical love. That's what it needs to be. We have got to be able to see the enemy, quote unquote enemy, and stop dehumanizing them, whomever they may be, have boundaries, disagree, do whatever we need to do to ensure that people aren't doing ill to other people, but still recognizing that they, even the enemy, this villain, this monster that you've created in your head, is deserving of God's love, is deserving of our love. And by the way, the only real way you're going to redeem that monster, that enemy, is through love. You're not going to do it by shaming them and blaming them and pointing all the fingers. You can only do it by saying, hey, listen, you dealing with whatever, bad things are going on in your life, we're going to have to possibly, put you in a jail or a prison or whatever it is, but we're not going to give up on loving your soul. And look at the ways that people go do that in prisons. Even now, for many years, there's a lot of people, their calling is to go into prisons and deal with people who have been on death row or whatever it is, and say like, hey, you're not an animal. I don't see you as an animal. I see you as having made a really bad decision or decisions that have put you where you are right now. But I'm not giving up on trying to evoke in you that you have actual tangible spiritual worth beyond even your actions, and redeeming their soul in that regard while they're here, while they're still here. That's powerful stuff. And that's radical love.
Wow. So how did you start to love yourself? Like, are there tangible steps somebody can take to love themselves? Because I don't think that you can, well, hold on. I don't know. But I remember my Aunt Lorraine would always say, you can't love someone unless you love yourself. You got to love yourself first. I'm like, yeah. Okay, cool. I didn't know what that meant.
Well, yeah. I mean, so yes, by and large, we definitely should take a page out of the flight attendant's guidebook, which is make sure your mask is on before you're trying to put on anybody else's. You've got to be tending to your garden. You have to and that includes your fences, your boundaries. You have to figure out with that homeostasis within your own kind of bubble, your situation. And that requires prioritizing yourself, not thinking of yourself as being greater than or more important than or whatever the things that would lead to hubris and arrogance or narcissism, but rather recognizing that you are only going to be the very best version of yourself to provide and to offer to this world, which is the gift that each one of us are. We are all an opportunity. We are all infinitely valuable and entirely unimportant, in my opinion, but we're all infinitely valuable in our ways that we could serve this world and make it a better place as a collective. But if we want to be the best version, most fruitful version of that, we've got to be healthy versions of ourselves. And we can. And I think that, so some practical steps of going and loving yourself, first and foremost, whether you think you need to go to therapy or not, go to therapy. It's one of the greatest investments you can make in yourself, because you don't realize how many things you're just holding on to, how many things are spinning around in your head that you could maybe not super easily right away, but you can very much let go of, that you can heal through, the traumas that can be, exercised out of your mind and your heart and your body. These are very important ways to invest in oneself, to love oneself. And then that also includes giving, not feeling this necessity, this need to go and take care of everyone else all the time. Now, granted, different people have different responsibilities. Mothers, fathers, people have children. Obviously, your time is not always your own, but you have got to still, even then, you still have to prioritize some of your most important needs. Otherwise, what service can you provide to the rest of your family? Not your best. Not the version of you that will help them the most in the versions of themselves, So I think that's an important thing. I think therapy is a great way to invest in yourself. I think prayer, meditation, movement, the gym, some kind of an exercise, program, consistency schedule in one's life, eating healthier, valuing your vessel. That is a huge way to love oneself. And the truth is, a lot of us don't. We don't realize that we're not, because we think we're kind of treating ourselves with whatever our crap diet might be, whether it's like tons of pizza or tons of ice cream or both. If you might be me sometimes. But by the way, and go kill some pizza and go kill some ice cream. I'm not saying these are in and of themselves bad things. I'm saying we have got to prioritize our health, our mental, emotional, spiritual, physical health. That is loving yourself. Go do that, and not at the expense of other people, because that's arrogance and hubris and narcissism, and start to love and value yourself. And it's difficult. It's a process. A therapist will help you through it. They're a good touchstone to be able to give you some actionable items, because everybody's journey is going to be a little different, honestly. Mm-hmm. What actionable items might be for me would be different for you, would be different for many of the people that are, going to listen to this podcast. So professional help is always a great first step, in loving yourself, I think.
Yeah. So you did your 3 weeks in Connecticut. And then from there, what has your practice been to maintain?
Basically all of those things that I was referring to, and I still struggle in those things. I am not some, Dalai Lama enlightened, like I got all this. This has been gravy. I go through seasons and ups and downs. And I mean, in the book, I go into a lot of detail about essentially, right before the pandemic, the book was as good as done. There was a few more edits to be made, and we were nearly to the finish line. And then the pandemic happened, and and this was, by the way, so I go to this incredible life-changing, life-saving therapy. I get Shazam. I do the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel right after that. My career, my life, things are just popping. I'm feeling great now. I've always felt great when I'm working. It feels good to have people like you and want to give you a job, and particularly if you're doing it well and people are like, oh yeah, they're doing a good job. You get that dopamine. I wasn't aware of that at the time, really aware of that, until the pandemic hit, and all of a sudden I wasn't working. None of us were, but it wasn't even my fault. And I still was harshing on myself so bad. I couldn't just sit at home and invest in myself. The idea of sitting and learning a language or an instrument or doing other productive things that
winning the weight.
What's that?
Winning the weight.
Winning the weight. Yeah. And I was so distraught, and the depression started sinking in again. And I didn't realize I was going into a massive dopamine deficiency, because I had been conditioned to do this so much in my life, starting with video game addictions when I was a kid, running away from my traumas and pains as a child. That is all this hamster wheel you can find yourself on. Yeah. And I have since learned so much about these things, listening to people like Huberman Lab. It's a great podcast. Other great, like, kind of health hormone, like body hacking type of things. I've learned so much about all of that, and I've been able to deduce, oh my gosh, yeah, this is definitely a dopamine thing. I think, more so than let's say a serotonin issue in my life. But I came crashing down in the beginning-ish of the pandemic. All of a sudden I fell to my knees again, and I was like, I can't finish this book. I can't write this book. This was supposed to be I wanted to, from suicide to superhero, literally. And now it would be suicide to superhero, back to suicide again. This is not the book that I need to put out into the world. How can I write about loving myself and helping people love themselves if I am still so struggling with it? And so I had to put it on hold. And then I had to start really digging more into getting my routine back and working on myself and loving myself. And part of that was even going and talking to a psychiatrist about finally using antidepressants, which I had always had at an arm's length. That was the one kind of line too far in my own judgment of myself, of my mental health. I think growing up, going to church and, as a Christian and all that, you hear if you're having depressive thoughts or suicidal thoughts, or you're having any real thoughts or emotions that are negative, chances are you were told at least once, if not multiple times, hey, that's a spiritual problem. You just need to pray that away. God will help, relieve that. We'll pray all these things. Now, I'm not knocking prayer and the power of prayer and manifestation. I think that's real powerful stuff. But guess what? God also gave us doctors of all different types to help us through these things. And if I had to get my leg, if I broke my leg and they have to reset my leg, I'm not just biting down on some leather while they're pouring some, moonshine on it. And I'm like, oh, do it. No, I'm going to have them put me under, and they're going to do it because Lord knows we got this beautiful, ability to do that. And in the same way, I finally buckled, and I'm so glad that I did, on giving myself the opportunity to at least try using antidepressants to just balance me back out to where I felt like a normal person again. And lo and behold, once I kind of figured out exactly kind of where I was, neurologically and metaphysically, physiologically, and realizing dopamine, kind of adjusting my dopamine was probably the cause. Boom. Oh my gosh. I feel like I can be above the darkness and the clouds in ways that I was still, even when I would get up and do a lot of my routine, and I got to the gym and I meditated and I was eating well and all of these various things, my biochemistry was still pretty hacked. It was still pretty gnarly. So that was a huge part of loving myself in that moment. And I encourage anyone else not to just go take antidepressants or any drugs for that matter. Be very careful about what you put in your body, whatever that is. But go talk to a psychiatrist if you feel like it's necessary, and ask them about some options. If you're feeling genuinely depressed and consistently depressed, they can talk you through it. They'll understand if it's something that's just a passing thing, that maybe you don't need any extra help for, or maybe you very much do need some help. I took a therapist, and a few friends of mine consistently encouraging me, saying, hey, I was afraid too. Trust me, it changed my life for the better. It's so worth it. And then the therapist I was talking to, basically using the analogy of like, hey, Zach, imagine you're standing in a pitch black room. There's a stool. You can feel it. It's right next to you. And there's a light right above you, but you can't reach it without the stool. Imagine that those antidepressants, that's the stool. In order to get the lights on, at least just step up on that stool and turn the lights on. Now, you might be able to, after a moment or two, step off that stool and you're good. Or you maybe need to stay on that stool for a little while just to make sure that light stays on. But with the light on, you're able to, again, see yourself, the world, and how you fit into it far more clearly. And so that's definitely what it's helped me do.
Wow. Well, I have to ask, because I had a friend who was on anxiety medicine. When they went to get insured for a production, the doctor was like, don't put that down. They won't insure you. And another friend was denied life insurance because he had a psychiatric thing on his record.
Yeah.
Have you faced any of that? And is there any way to avert any of that?
Very grateful that I have not, that I know of. I don't think that has been an issue. But I will tell you, it was one of my biggest fears. Every time we sign a contract, there's always those questions of like, particularly the one that always stood out to me was, have you ever been hospitalized overnight for any kind of mental health issue? And I remember vividly, I was in Austin in the darkness, not knowing what to do. My buddy was like, hey man, there's a psychiatric ward at this hospital in Austin. Just go. And I was terrified because I was like, if this is my only option, this is my only option. But what happens if they say, well, you need to stay overnight? Well, now I've got to put that on this form all the time. And is that very much going to be this like, oh, wait a minute, what? No, we can't trust this guy. We can't put a franchise movie on his shoulders. He'll crack, he'll buckle, to do whatever. I was legitimately terrified about it, but I was in a place where I had no other option. So I went, and then I was actually presented after I, talked to the social worker. God bless her. I mean, some lovely people working in this hospital, but it's a very tough situation because, they're seeing people with really acute problems like myself sometimes, and they don't know me from Adam. They don't know other than what I'm telling them, spewing out my life history. So like all over the place, my mom and my dad and things and that, and just bawling, crying. And this woman's like, well, listen, there's one of two options. You can stay overnight for, watch, or we can give you this, what was essentially like Benadryl, to just like calm you down. And I looked at this woman, these two women, and I was gobsmacked. I was like, I don't know that I want to live, but these are my two options. And one I'm so terrified of that I don't think I can actually do that. And the other one is you send me home with a Benadryl. And I actually I don't know that I audibly laughed, but inside, even in all the midst of me not wanting to live, I had this weird, I don't know, gallows humor. It was so this is really, but it also spurned so much in me of this has to change. We've got to be able to, unfortunately, I let my mental cavities get to the point of needing a root canal. We need to help people be brushing and flossing their brains and their hearts every single day so that we don't need that level of help. If we could have just normal, weekly ability to just walk in off the street and talk to an incredibly wise, intelligent, empathetic person who can just help us to correct some of the bad stinking thinking along the way. Hopefully, we don't need to have the massive, getting into all that later on down the road. That's the goal. I work with this really incredible nonprofit called Active Minds, and they are on 500 plus college campuses, and also I think 100 plus high school campuses around the country, where they provide mental health education and resources to all the students, faculty, but particularly with the students. I just think it's so incredibly integral because you're grabbing these minds at such an important phase of their life. They are coming into their adulthood. They are leaving their parents' home with all of these ideas of who they think they are or what they're supposed to be. And if you can get to them early enough and be like, yo, here's all the cool stuff that your parents taught you. Don't let go of that. Also, here's a bunch of stuff that you really ought to take a look at and maybe have a different opinion on, or, switch your perspective, because it's important that you understand how your brain and your heart and your body work together. And if we can get there, we can, intercept those thoughts before they can take hold. Oh man, what an incredible world we would have. I really, truly believe that every single problem that we suffer as human beings on this earth can all be rooted back to a broken heart and a broken mind. Every single one of them. And if we can go upstream, go back to the source of all of those broken hearts and minds, we have no murder, we have no rape, we have no theft, we have no war, we have no famine, we have no greed, we don't have these things. We don't have people that are broken and then acting out of their brokenness, acting out of their unhealed trauma, hurting people. We don't have that anymore because we've gotten to the source of the problems. And I love that Active Minds is, very actively doing that on college campuses. And I think that is just one of many, many areas that we need to be diving into to go and help people get, living not just individually better lives, but collectively. What a wonderful world we could be living in if we could do this for everyone.
So true. I love the dental floss. Thank you so much.
Thank you again, genuinely, for your time. I appreciate being on the podcast.
Of course, anytime. So much good stuff in there. I wanted to ask so many more questions.
You gave us so much, and you asked so many great questions, with the time we had. Queen. I feel like we have to get him back, and he loves you, obviously. You guys just had a great chemistry. I was like, ooh, he was talking almost like so fast and he was giving so much that I need to go back and like listen again and digest it all. Cause I was like, dang, everything he was saying, he's really been through it and done the work. And I think that that's just really special and really great.
And the mental dental floss.
Oof, so
that
good.
was like when Dr. Hyman said, when you go to the supermarket, think of it like a pharmacy.
Yeah.
That moment he said that, it was like, oh yeah, if we're flossing all the time, we're not going to need a root canal.
So good. I really appreciated him opening up about the meds, because I know that that's like it's a hard topic for a lot of people. And I just think that again, it's like all of you all that are sharing this and speaking this, it's like, it makes everyone else so much more comfortable to talk about it as well. So I just think it's amazing.
And it's cool to hear that he was scared to go get his help, because I think that's so important for people to know that exists, because that has to change.
I agree.
You can't be in a position where you're afraid to get the help that you need. And unfortunately, we're still in that kind of world and realm. But Zachary taking kind of this step and writing this book is a big help, I think, and a big deal. So, it's a step in the right direction.
Agreed. Amen.
Or as Elizabeth Holmes would say, it's an exciting step forward. It's an exciting step forward.
That was good.
Man, that was pretty good.
That was a good impression.
Good job, Maria.
I ended a huge meeting, side note, recently. Huge meeting, like unreal, like best meeting of my life. And I ended it with that. And they all died.
That's amazing. We need to get Amanda on. You guys can have Elizabeth Holmes off on how you. So good. She was brilliant in it.
So good. Anyhow, this is so cool.
Really
I really enjoyed our chat. In the meantime, friends, if you are watching on YouTube and you have not subscribed, this is what we do here every single day. I think it's pretty cool. And just like he was saying at the end, the goal for us is to reach everybody who's your age and younger, and all the way to Deb, Mrs. Meyer.
Shout out Deb.
And my dad and older. Like, I want everybody to be hearing this stuff, because we all need this help. I mean, I didn't even get to get into multi-generational patterns with him, but that for sure is a whole other thing I'm sure he's going to be exploring. And obviously he was aware of Dr. Joe, which was cool. But this is what we're doing here every day. We're exploring all of these things and trying to get better. And we're trying to have fun while we're doing it. And so hit subscribe and join us, be part of the Heal Squad. If you are listening, you can help us out by sending a review via Apple Podcasts. We can leave a link to that in the summary of this episode to make it really easy. And anything else you need to know about the show, mariamenounos.com. We have the daily life hack blogs of each episode. So all the aha moments are written in there for you to make it easy, because it's like going to school every day. We've got a lot of content here, and we want to make sure you guys have it. So we do the work so that you guys have that all there. And then there's, lots of other stuff there too. So check it out. And don't forget Macy's.com/better together for all your Macy's buys. Check out my curated list of summer stuff there. In the meantime, be nice people, make good choices, and be present.
This podcast and all related content published or distributed by or on behalf of Maria Menounos or MariaMenounos.com is for informational purposes only and may include information that is general in nature and that is not specific to you. Any information or opinions expressed or contained herein are not intended to serve as or replace medical advice, nor to diagnose, prescribe, or treat any disease, condition, illness, or injury, and you should consult the healthcare professional of your choice regarding all matters concerning your health, including before beginning any exercise, weight loss, or healthcare program. If you have or suspect you may have a healthcare emergency, please contact a qualified healthcare professional for treatment. Any information or opinions provided by a guest expert or host featured within website or on company's podcast are their own, not those of Maria Menounos or the company. Accordingly, Maria Menounos and the company cannot be responsible for any results or consequences or actions you may take based on information or opinions.